Zainab had grown up in a small house with cracked walls and a leaky roof. Her father had passed away when she was very young, and her mother, Mama Zuwaira, worked hard selling vegetables at the local market to keep food on the table. Zainab was not used to much luxury. She wore simple clothes and shared almost everything with her younger siblings. But she had always dreamed of a better life, one where she would not have to worry about where her next meal would come from or if her slippers would tear on the way to school. One afternoon, while returning from a friend's house, Zainab met Emeka. He was not like any man she had ever known. His car shone in the sun, a sleek machine that looked as if it belonged in a magazine. He stepped out wearing expensive clothes, his shoes polished to perfection, his wristwatch sparkling like it was made of stars. People stopped on the street to admire him, but he seemed not to notice. His eyes rested on Zainab, who was walking with her small handbag and a shy smile. "Hello, beautiful," he said smoothly. His voice was deep, confident, and carried the tone of someone who always got what he wanted. Zainab felt her heart skip, not just because of his looks but because of the way he spoke, as if she was the only person who mattered. Their conversation was short, but it was enough for Emeka to ask for her number. Zainab, though shy, gave it to him. That night she could not sleep. She kept thinking about the rich young man who had stopped to talk to her like she was special. The very next day, Emeka called and invited her out. She hesitated, but curiosity won. He took her to a restaurant she had only seen on television, where the lights were golden and the plates shone like silver. The food was like nothing she had tasted before, soft, sweet, and filling. She sat across from him, wondering how her life had changed so suddenly. After that first meeting, Emeka began to shower her with gifts. Expensive clothes that smelled of perfume, shiny shoes that clicked on the pavement, a smartphone she had once only admired through shop windows. He even took her on trips outside the city, showing her hotels with pools and rooms bigger than her entire house. Zainab felt like she was living a dream. Her friends, who once teased her for her simple life, now looked at her with envy. They whispered behind her back, saying she was lucky, saying she had caught the attention of a man who lived like a king. Everywhere she went, people stared at her new clothes, her glowing skin, her sparkling jewelry. She had become someone new, someone she had once wished to be. But not everyone was pleased. Her mother watched quietly as her daughter's life transformed overnight. Mama Zuwaira was a woman who had lived long enough to know that not every glittering thing was gold. One evening, she sat beside Zainab while she admired her new phone. "My daughter," her mother said softly, "you must be careful. Quick money does not last. The world may show you sweetness, but hidden inside may be bitterness." Zainab laughed lightly. "Mama, you worry too much. Emeka is kind and he cares for me. Can't you see how he treats me? He wants to give me the life I deserve." Her mother shook her head. "A man who spends money without sweat, be careful with such a man." But Zainab did not listen. She was blinded by the comfort, the gifts, and the attention she was receiving. Her friends encouraged her even more. "Do not waste this chance," one of them told her. "Men like Emeka do not come every day. Hold him tight." And so Zainab chose to ignore her mother's warning. She told herself that her mother was only speaking from a place of poverty and fear. Zainab was sure that her story was different, that her love with Emeka was real. Still, sometimes when she lay in her bed at night, staring at the ceiling, she wondered how Emeka made his money. He never spoke of work. He never mentioned a job or business. He always laughed when she asked, brushing away her questions with a smile. "Don't worry your pretty head," he would say. "Just enjoy the life I'm giving you." And Zainab would silence her thoughts, convincing herself that love and wealth had finally come her way. For her, the glittering life was too sweet to resist. She was determined to enjoy it, even if deep down, a small voice whispered warnings she refused to hear. Zainab's life seemed brighter every day, but slowly little shadows began to appear. At first she did not pay attention. She was too busy enjoying the fine clothes, the trips, and the way people admired her when she walked by. But as time passed, she started noticing things that made her uneasy. Emeka always had money, plenty of it, yet she never saw him working. He did not own a shop, nor did he go to an office. When she asked what he did, he only smiled, kissed her forehead and said, "I take care of business." But what business? Most nights, Emeka's phone would ring. The sound would break the silence long after midnight. Zainab would wake up and hear him speaking in whispers, his voice sharp, sometimes angry, sometimes playful. After the calls, he would quickly dress, grab his car keys and disappear into the night. Hours later, he would return with bags she never opened and a smile that did not reach his eyes. One evening, Zainab sat quietly in the living room when Emika's friends came to visit. They were loud, flashy and careless with their words. They wore gold chains, drove expensive cars and laughed as though the world belonged to them. Zainab brought drinks to the table and pretended not to listen. But their laughter carried through the room. "Emika, you're the king of YAHOO boys," one of them shouted, raising his glass. The room exploded with laughter. Zainab froze. The glass in her hand trembled. She had heard the term before. In town, people whispered about YAHOO boys, young men who made their money through fraud, scamming others across the world. It was quick money, dirty money, the kind her mother had warned her about. Her heart thumped as if it wanted to escape her chest. Could it be true? Could the life she was living be built on lies and stolen wealth? Later that night, when the house grew quiet and Emika was alone with her, she gathered courage and asked, "Emika, what did your friends mean? Why did they call you a YAHOO boy?" For a moment, silence filled the air. Then Emika threw his head back and laughed loudly. "Zainab, my love, you worry too much. These are just jokes among men. You know how boys like to talk. Don't let such words trouble you." But his eyes did not laugh. They were sharp, almost warning her not to dig deeper. "I only want to understand," Zainab whispered. Emika leaned closer and placed his hand gently on her chin. His smile returned, but it was the kind of smile that made her heart uneasy. "Listen, Zainab. I give you everything you want. Clothes, phones, trips. Your life has changed because of me. All I ask is that you enjoy it. Stop asking questions. Questions will only make you unhappy." His words lingered in the air like smoke. That night, Zainab lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Her mind was full of noise. She thought of her mother's warning, "Quick money does not last." She thought of her simple life before Emika, the peace of poverty compared to the fear she felt now. She looked at the fine clothes hanging in her wardrobe, the shiny shoes lined neatly on the floor, the expensive phone on the table. All of them sparkled in the dim light, but to Zainab, they suddenly looked heavy, as though each item carried a secret price. The next morning she watched Emika carefully. He was on his phone again, speaking in codes she did not understand. He smiled at her between calls, but the smile no longer comforted her. It felt like a mask. Her friends still envied her. "You are the luckiest of all of us," they said, touching her new bag, admiring her dress. "Do not lose this man. He is your golden chance." Zainab nodded, but her heart was not at peace. She wanted to ask them, what if his gold is not real? But she kept silent. That evening, Emika took her out. The restaurant was filled with music, lights, and laughter. He ordered the most expensive meals, the finest drinks. People looked at them with admiration. To everyone else, she was the picture of happiness. But Zainab's mind was elsewhere. Every bite of food tasted bitter, every laugh from Emika's friends echoed in her ears. King of YAHOO boys. When they returned home, Zainab sat alone by the window. Outside, the city lights glowed, bright but distant. She wondered if she was living in a dream that could turn into a nightmare at any moment. Emika walked to her and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Why do you look sad, my love?" he asked. Zainab forced a small smile. "I'm just tired." He kissed her forehead and whispered, "Then rest. Tomorrow will be brighter." But as she closed her eyes, she felt the weight of a truth she could not run from. The life she lived was beautiful on the outside, but inside, it carried secrets that could destroy everything. And deep in her heart, Zainab knew, her story with Emika was only just beginning. Zainab could not escape her thoughts anymore. Her conscience became louder than the music in the clubs, stronger than the laughter of her friends, and heavier than the gold Emika placed around her neck. It started one quiet afternoon when she sat in the living room, flipping through television channels. She stopped when she saw a news report. On the screen, a woman was crying, her hands shaking as she held a paper. The reporter explained that her savings had been stolen by online fraudsters. She had worked for years, only to lose everything to men who tricked her with fake promises. Next came an old man with gray hair, his voice breaking as he spoke of his retirement money disappearing. Zainab stared at the screen, her chest tightening. She touched the necklace around her neck, the one Emika had given her just days before. She looked down at her shoes, shining and new. Suddenly they felt heavy, as though they were made of tears. Every word the people on the screen spoke seemed to point at her. "This is the price of your comfort. These are the faces behind your glittering life." That night she could not eat. Emika noticed her silence and asked gently, "What is troubling you, my love?" Zainab wanted to tell him everything, that the gifts no longer made her smile, that she felt guilt in every step she took wearing his riches. But when she looked into his eyes, she froze. His gaze was strong, almost commanding, and his voice was sweet like honey. "Do not worry about things that don't concern you," he whispered, pulling her close. "I promise to give you the best life, and I will. Let me carry the weight. You just enjoy." His words sank into her like warm water, soothing her doubts for a moment. He handed her a small box. Inside was a bracelet sparkling with tiny diamonds. Zainab's heart skipped. She wanted to resist, but her fingers touched the cold stones, and she felt herself weakening again. Every time she tried to step away, Amika pulled her back, not with chains but with comfort. The next week, Zainab visited her mother. The old woman looked at her with searching eyes. "My daughter, you do not smile the way you used to. Tell me, is all well with you?" Zainab forced a laugh. "Everything is fine, Mama. Amika takes care of me." Her mother did not smile. She only shook her head slowly. "Remember my words, Zainab. Quick money is like a shadow. It looks big, but it disappears when the sun changes." Those words followed Zainab home, echoing in her mind. One evening, Amika left the house for one of his late-night meetings. Zainab sat alone in the quiet. She opened his laptop, something she had never dared to do before. Her hands shook as she pressed the keys. What she saw made her blood run cold. Emails full of lies, promises of love and wealth, pictures of strangers being tricked. Messages of victims begging for their money back filled the screen. Zainab's stomach turned. She closed the laptop quickly and pressed her hands over her face. Tears slid down her cheeks. She wanted to run, to leave and never return. But then she remembered the soft bed she slept in, the fine clothes she wore, the looks of envy her friends gave her. She remembered Emika's smile, his strong arms around her, and his voice promising her a life without lack. The next morning, Amika returned with a new phone for her. "For my queen," he said, slipping it into her hands. She stared at the device, torn between throwing it away and hugging him tightly. Her conscience screamed louder every day. At night, when she closed her eyes, she saw the faces of those victims on the news. The crying woman, the broken old man, the ruined families. In her dreams, they pointed at her and whispered, "This is what you are wearing. This is what you are eating." But when she woke up, there was Amika placing breakfast on the table, kissing her cheek, calling her, "My sunshine." Zainab felt like a bird in a golden cage. She had everything yet felt imprisoned. She tried to leave once. She packed a small bag and waited for Amika to return so she could tell him. But when he walked in, his arms full of shopping bags, his laughter filling the room, her courage melted. He handed her a red dress, her favorite color, and said, "I saw this and thought of you." Her bag stayed hidden under the bed. She told herself, "Maybe it is not so bad. Maybe Amika is right. Maybe I should just enjoy this life and stop thinking too much." But the truth would not leave her. Each gift became a reminder, not of love, but of stolen lives. Each trip, each meal, each jewel felt like fire against her skin. She was trapped between her heart and her desires, between her mother's voice and Amika's charm. One night, Zainab stood by the mirror, wearing the red dress Amika had given her. She looked beautiful, like the kind of woman she had always dreamed of becoming. Yet behind her reflection she saw something else: guilt, fear, and the image of the crying faces from the news. She touched her necklace, then pulled it off and let it fall to the floor. For the first time she whispered aloud, "This is not love. This is not life." But even as she said it, her hands trembled because deep inside she was not sure she had the strength to walk away. And so Zainab stood at the edge of her turning point, caught between two worlds, one of glittering lies and one of painful truth. Her next choice would decide everything. The night was quiet, almost too quiet, until the silence broke with the loud crash of doors and the heavy sound of boots. Zainab jumped from her bed, her heart racing as police officers rushed into the mansion. Their flashlights cut through the darkness, their voices sharp and commanding. "Stay where you are. Hands up." Zainab froze, her body trembling as fear took over. She watched in shock as officers stormed the rooms, pulling out laptops, phones, documents, and bags filled with money. The life she had been enjoying suddenly turned into a nightmare before her very eyes. Amika, still dressed in his expensive clothes, tried to argue. "You don't know who I am. You can't do this to me." But the officers ignored him. They handcuffed him tightly, and for the first time, Zainab saw panic in his eyes. Her breath caught in her throat as reality came crashing down. She remembered the nights Amika had left with bags, the whispers of his friends, the strange calls, and the jokes about YAHOO boys. Everything her mother had warned her about was now standing before her like an open wound. One officer glanced at her. "Are you with him?" Zainab shook her head quickly, her voice breaking. No. I didn't know. They didn't take her, but the looks they gave her said enough. They saw her as part of the glittering world built on other people's pain. She felt her knees weaken and she sank into a chair, her eyes filling with tears. The mansion that once looked like paradise now felt like a prison falling apart. Expensive furniture, golden chandeliers, and sparkling jewelry were being pushed aside as evidence. She stared at it all and realized it meant nothing. When Emeka was dragged past her, his eyes met hers. For a moment, his charm and confidence returned. Don't leave me, Zainab. Wait for me. I'll fix this. You and I are meant to live like kings and queens. But this time his words had no power. She saw not a king but a man who had built his throne on lies. Her chest tightened as she whispered to herself, "This is not love. This is not life." When the police cars drove away, the mansion felt emptier than ever. Zainab sat in the middle of the living room, her hands covering her face. She thought of her mother's words again, "Quick money does not last." She finally understood. That night she called her family. Her mother's voice was calm but firm. "My daughter, it is not too late. Leave now. Do not wait until your name is destroyed too." Her younger brother begged her to. "Sister, come home. We will eat little, but at least it will be clean." Zainab cried, her tears soaking her pillow. She looked around at the mansion one last time, the clothes, the shoes, the jewels, the bed she once thought was heaven. None of it brought her peace. None of it could remove the fear in her heart. She stood up slowly, her legs weak but her spirit growing stronger. She picked up a small bag and packed only a few clothes. The rest she left behind. Before walking out, she stood in front of the mirror. For years, she had admired her reflection with pride, loving the glow that wealth had given her. But tonight she saw a different woman. She saw someone tired, broken but ready to change. She wiped her tears, lifted her chin and whispered, "I choose peace." The road outside was dark, the night air heavy with silence. But as she walked away from the mansion, she felt something she hadn't felt in years: freedom. Each step carried her away from the chains of dirty wealth, away from Emeka's lies and closer to her true self. Zainab did not know what the future held. She knew people would laugh at her, call her foolish for leaving riches behind. She knew some would say she was stupid to walk away from a life many would envy. But for the first time she didn't care. She wanted peace, and peace was worth more than gold. When she reached her mother's house, the old woman opened the door with tears in her eyes. She pulled Zainab into her arms and whispered, "Welcome home, my child. You made the right choice." In that moment, Zainab realized something powerful. Sometimes walking away is the biggest victory of all. Her life would no longer be about glittering lies. It would be about building something real, even if it was small. For the first time her heart was free. Months passed, and the city that once sang Emeka's praises now whispered his name with pity and shame. The same men who used to sit in his living room, drinking his wine and laughing at his jokes, now avoided his calls. The women who once chased him for his gifts no longer wanted to be seen with him. His cars were seized, his mansion stood empty, and his laughter had vanished. He sat alone in a small rented room, thinking about the days when he felt untouchable. Zainab, on the other hand, chose a different road. She started small, with the little savings she had left and the help of her mother. She opened a small fashion shop in the market. At first people doubted her. They whispered, "Is this not the girl who used to wear clothes from abroad? How can she now sit in a small stall?" But Zainab kept her head high. She folded fabrics neatly, welcomed customers with a smile, and worked from morning till night. Each day she sold a little, and with each sale her heart grew stronger. Unlike the expensive gifts Emeka once gave her, every coin she earned carried pride. Her mother often reminded her, "My daughter, when your hands work, your heart rests." And Zainab believed it more and more. As weeks turned into months, her shop grew. People began to admire her designs and the way she treated everyone with respect. Slowly, her name was no longer tied to Emeka's scandal but to her own hard work. The same neighbors who once mocked her now praised her. She was no longer just a girl who followed glitter, she was a woman who built her own light. Sometimes young women came to her stall, their eyes wide with dreams of luxury. They asked her, "Sister Zainab, how did you live such a rich life with Emeka? How can we also get men who buy us cars and clothes?" Zainab would smile softly, her hands still busy folding cloth. She would look into their eyes and answer, "Quick money fades but self-respect lasts forever. Do not let anyone buy your soul with gifts. When you work for what you have, no one can take it from you." Her words carried weight, for they came from experience. She did not speak with anger or bitterness, but with wisdom born from scars that healed. And many young women listened, some nodding in silence, some walking away thoughtful. One afternoon, as she arranged new dresses in her shop, Zainab heard a familiar voice calling her name. She turned and there stood Emeka. He looked nothing like the man she once knew. His fine clothes were gone, his watch was cheap, and his eyes carried the sadness of someone who had lost everything. For a moment, silence hung between them. Emeka looked at her, his lips trembling. "Zainab, I never thought I would see you like this. You look different. Strong." Zainab did not gloat. She did not mock him. She simply nodded. "Life teaches everyone in different ways," she said quietly. He lowered his eyes, shame covering his face. "I lost everything. Friends, money, respect, they all left me. And now I see what you saw the night you walked away. You were wise and I was blind." Zainab's heart softened, but she knew she could not go back. "Emeka, I do not hate you," she said gently. "But I will not walk that road again. I found peace in honest work, and that is more valuable than all the gold in the world." Emeka swallowed hard, tears filling his eyes. He nodded slowly and walked away, leaving her with a mix of sorrow and relief. As the sun set that evening, Zainab closed her shop and looked at the sky. She thought of her journey, how she once traded her peace for gifts, how she almost lost herself in glitter, and how she found strength to start again. Her lips curved into a smile. She knew now that life was not about how much one owned but how much one valued themselves. She had lost fake riches, but she had gained real respect. She was no longer the girl blinded by a Yahoo boy's wealth. She was a woman who built her life with her own hands. And whenever she walked through the market, children waved at her, women greeted her warmly, and men respected her. Her story had become a lesson for many, that quick money dies but dignity lives forever. For Zainab that was enough.